Okay, sorry everyone, had to get the recording started. So thanks for joining us today. This is your last review session. Just a reminder, Exam 4 is your final. It's not comprehensive though, so Exam 4 is only going to cover material from Unit 7. So once again, not comprehensive, only Unit 7. It's going to be the exact same format as before. Everything's online, 90 minutes still, 50 questions. You're able to take this anytime during your scheduled day, so make sure you find a good time for you, somewhere where you can have some nice quiet time, good internet connection, all that. You don't want to take any chances on this. A little bit different structure this time. There are only 3 goals versus the normal 2 per unit. So that means that each goal covers about 33% of the exam instead of 25% like it was before. So I do want to point out the fact that the estate planning still covers 33% of the exam. So I know there's a lot of material about insurance and everything, but don't forget about the estate planning stuff. That's still going to be featured on there. It's still going to be about 33%. Once again, all questions are multiple choice or true false, so exact same format. Tips for studying: read all the required readings, go back and watch your lecture videos, review the participation questions. That's big. Those come from missed questions from previous exams. Go over your projects and quizzes, especially for this unit. That will come in handy. Make sure you understand all the concepts from the projects. Go back and look at your rubric, see what you missed, and make sure you understand it completely before going forward. And then lastly, the discussion boards and the study guide. So there's a lot of terminology on this. The study guide will walk you through that. Just make sure you know that the study guide doesn't cover everything. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of material in this exam, so you're going to be responsible for reading your chapters and all of that. Okay, so we'll get into the first goal, Goal 13, identifying types of risk and how to manage them. So we'll talk about what risk is, what you need to protect it, and how to protect it. So what is risk? Risk is really just uncertainty regarding future outcomes or events. So basically, risk that your house is going to burn down, risk that you might get in a wreck, risk that you develop some rare disease, have to get medical attention, maybe risk that you become disabled and can't work. So there are all these risks out there, and nobody really knows when they're going to come into play. So basically, you could just worry about it, you could devote resources to it, and try to worry about risk that way, or you can insure. So what insurance does, it just takes the fear of the unknown, which is an extremely variable cost. You can't really put a number on how much risk that you're taking on a daily basis. But insurance will take this variable cost and break it down to a very manageable fixed cost. So instead of not knowing how much you're going to pay, all of a sudden you know how much your premiums are, you know what your coverage is. So based on that, you know approximately what you're going to spend on medical expenses for the year. So this can be a great way to help you budget, a great way to know that you're protected instead of just kind of leaving the uncertainty out there. So the goal of insurance is protection. Remember, insurance isn't there for you to make money. It's only there for you to be made whole. So you want to either protect yourself, so that's going to be things like disability insurance, health insurance, protect your loved ones. That's going to be things like life insurance, and then protect your belongings, things like a homeowner's or an auto insurance policy. I just want to point out too, remember, nobody buys insurance because they expect to use it. It's just there to protect you. I mean, nobody knows whenever these unforeseen circumstances are going to happen, so that's why we insure. So just going over some vocabulary, be very familiar with these. These can get a little confusing, so make sure that you understand the differences between these three. So the first one, exposure, that's your source of risk. So that's like owning a TV, owning a car, owning a boat, anything like that leaves you open to risk. You could have it stolen, you could have something happen to it, or even cause damage where you're going to owe somebody something. So perils, on the other hand, are the actual sources of loss. So that's what causes the loss. So that's going to be like theft, injury, fire, wind, anything that causes you to experience a loss. So hazards is more on your part. So it's something that you do that increases the chance of a peril occurring. So this would be things like leaving your car running while you're in the store, not locking your doors at night, maybe having fire hazards around your home, driving in bad conditions if the roads are icy or something like that. So I feel like that's a pretty good example to show you the difference. So driving on icy roads is a peril on your part, or is something that you do to increase the peril on your part, sorry. So you are increasing the chances that you're going to incur a loss, and that's why it's a hazard. So a lot of knowing when to insure comes down to knowing the expected loss. So basically that's just how much am I going to lose out on should I experience a loss. So this is fairly easy to calculate. You just need to take your frequency of loss or the probability of a loss and multiply that by the severity, what you're going to lose should a loss occur. So this example here, you know you want to park on campus. You think you can just run into the library or something real quick. So you know your chances of getting a ticket are about 1 in 10, and that your cost is only about $5. So you just multiply those together, and that gives you your expected loss of 50 cents. So with that 1 over 10, just know that you have to break that down into an actual decimal place instead of just using it as a fraction. But that's all pretty easy. We'll go over an example here in a second. Okay, so this is how you decide what to insure. There are some instances where you want to insure, some where you don't. This handy chart should help you figure out which ones you need to and which ones to avoid insurance. Know this chart. You're going to see a lot of questions based on this. And this should help you in your overall life too, so it's definitely good to know. So we'll start in the top right-hand side. So that's low frequency, low severity. So whenever this happens, maybe the event doesn't happen very often, and when it does, you don't really lose out on a lot. So when that happens, you just kind of retain the risk. And what retaining the risk means is you know it's there, but you basically just choose to retain it. You know that you could lose something, but the severity is not that bad. So you might just accept it and go on. So a good example of this, I was at the baseball game yesterday. So when you go to a baseball game, you are retaining risk. You know that there's a possibility that somebody could hit a foul ball, hit you in the head. You could get hurt out there. I mean, it is a little bit dangerous. But it never really happens. People know that, so they choose to just retain it and go to the baseball game. So below that is going to be low severity and high frequency. So this stuff happens a lot, but when it happens, you still don't really, you're not really out much. So when that happens, you want to control the risk. So a good example of risk control would be not leaving your golf clubs in your car overnight because you know that there's a chance that somebody might break in and steal them. Basically anything like that where you are cutting down on the frequency. That's what control is there for. So lowering frequency. So then let's move over to high severity, high frequency. Actually, no, sorry. We'll do high severity, low frequency next. So this is something that when it happens, you risk losing a lot, but it doesn't happen very often. So when this happens, this is where you want to purchase insurance. This is what it's there for. So this is things like having homeowners insurance. I mean, you know that the odds of your home burning down aren't very great, but it still is a very real risk. And if it happens, you're going to lose the entire home if you're not insured. So obviously, you're going to want to insure for that. So then the last instance is high severity, high frequency. So when this happens, it happens a lot, and the severity is really big. So basically, you're going to lose a lot of money whenever this happens. So your first instinct may be, well, why don't we insure this? Well, basically, because of the high frequency, high severity, insurance companies know there's a lot of risk here. So it's really hard to get insured in this section. Most of the time, you're really just going to try to avoid the situation and stay out of the risk as much as possible. So this is going to be things like you know that smoking is bad for you. You know that the severity could be very real. You know that a lot of people who smoke get lung cancer. so you just avoid it. So let's talk about some examples of this. So let's start with driving. So we'll talk about how to either avoid, control, retain, or transfer with driving. So with driving, avoidance would be basically just don't drive. Maybe you're scared that something could happen, you just take public transportation. If you want to do control with driving, then you would drive slowly, maybe not text while you're driving, anything you can do to cut down on the amount of times that you're going to have an accident. Retaining, on the other hand, would be more like doing something that you know is dangerous but doing it anyways. So that's going to be like eating in the car, texting while driving, anything like that. And then transfer, obviously, is insurance. So just one more example, this time with smoking. So risk avoidance with smoking, don't do it, avoid it. Risk control would be to cut down on smoking or to use nicotine gum, anything you could do to cut down on your frequency, so cut down on the chances of you getting lung cancer. Retaining it would be smoking anyways. I realize there's a risk, but I'm willing to take that on. And then the last would be transferring by getting health insurance. So be very familiar with these. Be very familiar with the differences and examples of each one. Okay, so we talked about what insurance is for. Now we'll talk about what insurance is not for. So insurance is not for getting rich. You're not going to make money on insurance. You're basically there to get paid to make you whole, to make you into the position that you were in before the loss happened. So don't expect to get paid over what you lost, and be aware of insurance fraud and things like that. It's extremely bad. You definitely don't want to go down that road. So there's a principle called indemnity. That basically just means that you're able to make yourself whole but not make any money off of insurance. So make sure you're familiar with all these vocab terms. Okay, let's go into some examples. So this first one, increasing your deductible on your home owner's insurance or auto policy, is an example of what? Guesses? Okay, we have a vote for risk transfer. Actually, risk transfer would be the actual insurance. So retention, yeah. So we have an answer for A, retention. That's exactly right. So basically, you get to pick the amount of deductible that you have on your insurance. So if you want a $2,000 deductible, that says I'm going to retain that first $2,000. I'll be responsible for it. But if you're not as comfortable with that, maybe you only want a $500 limit. So in that case, you're retaining less of the risk and pushing more of it onto the insurance company. Okay, what about this one? Trading in your Lamborghini for a safe family car is an example of D. We have risk reduction. That's exactly right. So if you traded a really expensive car that's really expensive to insure, the parts of it or to replace would be really expensive, you could decide to get a safer car, and that's going to be reducing your risk. Okay, what about this one? A little math problem. Hold on one second, everyone. We're getting the screen switched over so I can write. Okay, we have an answer of 75 out here. That is correct. So let's walk through the steps. So we know there's a 1 in 20 chance your house will be destroyed. So that's your probability. So you just have to do. Oh, I got to switch it. There you go. So 1 in a 2 chance. And then we know that the severity is going to be 150,000. So multiply those out. And you get $75. So at first you may look at this and say, well, if I'm only risking $75, why would I even have insurance? But you have to realize this is only one individual risk. There are a lot more risks that go along with your house. You could have plumbing problems, you could have break-ins. So you need to add all these together. So think about it like that. Just because you see a small number doesn't mean that you don't need to be insured. Okay, so let's try this one. So this is pretty much the same thing, just in a little bit different form. So basically, set it up the same way. You know that the probability is 2%, so that's going to be 0.02. We know that it's a $30,000 loss. So multiply those out. 600. Oh, it's the wrong one. Okay. Okay. But online they see this, right?
Yeah, they see it, and we can see it too. It's just on the other screen.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, we have these set up to different monitors. Sorry, y'all. Okay, so the answer to that one is 600. I apologize. My writing's pretty bad on this screen. So now I need to switch back to the other one. Okay, so what about this one? Owning a lot of musical equipment is an example of blank, while the potential theft of that musical equipment is called blank. An answer for D. One for D. Anybody else? B and a D. The answer to this one is actually D. So owning the musical equipment is your exposure. It leaves you open to risk, and the actual theft is going to be the peril. That's what actually causes the loss. Okay, what about this one? Driving on roads during bad storms is an example of blank, while the actual road conditions are blank. Got an A, a vote for B. So this one is a little bit confusing. So the first part of the problem, you need to focus on the fact that it's talking about driving, and the second part is the actual road conditions. So the answer to this one is actually B. So the exposure is just you driving, but you driving on bad road conditions is where the hazard comes in. So I know that can be a little bit confusing. Just make sure that you separate the two. And last question, when should you consider buying insurance to mitigate risk or manage risk? So remember, this one is low frequency but high severity. If it's high frequency, high severity, you're not really going to be able to insure it. It's going to be too expensive. So low frequency and high severity is usually when we recommend insurance. Okay, I'm now going to hand the presentation over to Chi. She's going to talk to you guys about Goal 14.
Okay, so goal 14, understand the role of insurance in protecting human, financial, and property asset. So I will cover the life insurance and the health insurance, and Jacob will cover the rest other insurance. So so why do we need to have a life insurance? So there's two perspectives to understand. Yeah, so one is protect your human capital, which equals to make up the loss of your financial capital because your human capital is transferring to the financial asset. Your wages, your household inputs, that's one perspective to understand why we need a life insurance. And another perspective is we want a life insurance to protecting your loved ones against financial or economic losses, which means we probably need the death benefit to pay off the medical costs and the estate costs and the funeral costs. So that is one way to protect your survival family members. So that's the two perspectives to understand why we need a life insurance. So next question is how much life insurance do I need? So basically there are two ways to calculate how much you need. One is the multiple of earning approach. This is easy, but it's not skewed, which means it is not accurate. So another way is needs-based approach. That is more accurate and better way to estimate how much you need. So you probably need to remember these two ways how to calculate how much life insurance do you need. And the next thing is what types of insurance you should buy. So I will introduce the generally two types of life insurance here. We will not like a calculation question, only a definition question, like what, for example, is probably not exactly the question in the exam, but probably the exam question will ask what what types of life insurance, what are two types of the way to calculate how much life insurance you're gonna need. So they will just ask what kind of method you can use to calculate that. They will not ask you to, yeah, they will not actually ask you to calculate exactly the number how much you need. So you basically just need to know the first way is multiple of earning approach. The second way is the need-based approach. Okay, any other questions? Okay, I'll go on. So the first type of life insurance is term life insurance. And the most important advantage of the term life insurance is it is more affordable, which means its premium is cheaper than the cash value policy. And you need to understand in which situation you will purchase a term life insurance. So the term life insurance, because the premium is cheaper, it's more better for a young family because you cannot afford a very expensive cash value policy. And the term life insurance coverage will usually ends when you want it to. So basically you have a specific term for this life insurance, maybe 10 years, maybe 20 years. So during the insured period, if you don't die, your beneficiary won't get anything. But if you die, your beneficiary will get a death benefit in the policy. And I don't think we will we'll ask question like what kind of types of term insurance, like the guaranteed renewable level premium or the decreasing term, but you should better know the difference between these two types of term life insurance, but there's no question in the exam test about this. So another type of life insurance, the cash value policy. This policy has a saving and investment component. And this policy is more expensive than term one, which means a dollar for dollar less coverage than the term insurance because the premium is higher, the death benefit will be less. And that is the cash value policy will protect you from the creditors. That is a very important thing you want to remember. And another thing is this kind of policy is very good for people in the higher tax brackets who already exhausted other means of savings. So this is a very good vehicle to save tax. But the saving tax is only available after you die. So basically the death benefit is tax-free. So actually this policy is not for you to enjoy the tax benefit. It's for your surviving family members to enjoy the tax benefit. So this is a very important thing you want to remember. And next is health insurance. Yeah, you want to remember the four goals of the Affordable Care Act. They will be tested in the exam. So remember the four goals of the Affordable Care Act. The first is provides new consumer protection. Second is seeks to improve quality and lower cost. Third one increases access to affordable care. Fourth is holds insurance companies accountable. This will be taxed in the exam. And next is how to calculate the health insurance cost. I know it's a little bit confusing, but I think I will use the next two practice questions to go through the process how to calculate the health insurance cost. Jacob, I need to switch the screen. Um, mhm. So, okay, try it. Yes. So the first question is, Josie has a traditional health insurance plan with 1,000 deductible and 70/30 co-insurance. If you see this number, you will automatically regard the 30% is for your part and 70% is for the insurance part. And there is a 4,000 out-of-pocket maximal. So this is a policy in the health insurance. Now her total health care bill is 12,000. So this is number we will start from. First, her total health bill is 12,000. So we need to know if this number is higher than the deductible or lower than the deductible. So the 12,000 is higher than the 1,000 deductible. So the 1,000 deductible will go first. And then the rest of her bill, which is the 12,000 minus the 1,000 deductible. This part will go to the co-insurance calculation, which means Josie will pay only 30% of this amount. So the difference multiplied by 30%. That will be 33. Yes. So now the total cost will be, no, not the total cost. The total out-of-pocket cost will be 1,000 plus 3,300, which is 4,300. And now we need to compare this number, the 3,300, with the 4,000 out-of-pocket maximal, and we will choose the last one. Which one is the last? We'll choose the amount. So 4,300 is higher than the 4,000 out-of-pocket maximal. So we'll choose the 4,000 out-of-pocket maximal as our final out-of-pocket cost. So any questions? Okay. So basically in the exam, we will also ask a question about how much is her total out-of-pocket cost and how much is her total cost of the health insurance. So anybody know the difference between these two terms? So there's two terms we're going to ask in the exam. One is the out-of-pocket total cost. One is the out-of-pocket total cost is a number we calculate here, which is 4,000. But if the question asking what is her total cost of the health insurance, that will be different. This information is not showing this question, but actually if the question provide the information about the premium, that will be the total cost of her health insurance, which is her out-of-pocket cost plus the premium. So you need to know the different terms of these two questions. Any questions online? No. Okay, I will go ahead for the next question. Okay, so next question is pretty similar, but kind of different. So Jim has a traditional house insurance with 500 deductible and 80-20 co-insurance, which means Jim will pay 20% of the co-insurance and a 3,000 out-of-pocket maximum. And now his total health care bill is 5,750. So how much will he pay for that? So we will start 5,750. This is higher than the 500 deductible. So we'll pay the 500 deductible. And then we'll go to the co-insurance part, which is 5,750 minus 500. And this amount multiplied by the 20%. So that is 1,050. So now his total out-of-pocket cost will be the deductible, which is 500 plus the 1,050. Yes.
What number is the 100? Minus what?
Total healthcare bill minus
The deductible. Yeah, I'm sorry about my rating. 500, yeah. Okay, so it's 1,550, and we will also do this. The final step, compare this amount with the 3,000 out-of-pocket maximum. We'll choose whichever less. So in this case, the 1,550 is less than the 3,000, so we'll choose this amount. That's how we calculate the health insurance cost, the medical bill. Any questions? No. Okay. Change that. Yeah, and it's your turn.
Okay. All right. So now we're going to talk about disability insurance. Before we do, though, let me just remind you, if you're joining from a distance, please put your name and your instructor's name in the chat box. And those of you joining us here, if you haven't already, put your name down on the appropriate list. Okay. Oh, there's a follow-up question from online. So the co-insurance the customer uses is always on the right, 80-20. Okay, yeah. So if it's 80-20, it's the 20% that the insured will pay. If it's 70-30, the insured will pay 30. If it's 90-10, the insured will pay 10. Those are the three most common that you'll see. All right, let's talk about disability insurance. So first of all, who needs disability insurance? Everybody? Somebody? Okay, so if you have a job, basically, right? If you're retired, fully retired, and living off your savings and your investments, you really don't need disability insurance. And actually, you probably won't be able to get it, right? Because it's meant to replace the wages from your job. So if your employer doesn't offer it, you can go get it on your own. But if you're working and you are dependent on that income to survive, you probably want some sort of disability insurance. All right, what about, so we've talked in class about short-term versus long-term, or you've watched the lecture video about short-term versus long-term. What's the philosophy there? Should you get short-term? Should you get long-term? Should you get both? in general. So short-term tends to be more expensive, and it's only going to cover you for a short amount of time. Long-term is going to be less expensive, and it's going to cover you for a longer period of time. Now, what we want to think about when we think about getting insurance is to protect against catastrophe. You don't want to just to insure every little thing, right? So the recommendation for most people is get long-term insurance because that's going to be more for catastrophes, and probably avoid getting short-term because it's going to be more expensive and it's only going to cover you for a short amount of time, which hopefully you've got an emergency fund in place to help cover for that. Now, if your work offers it for really cheap, maybe it makes sense, or if, there could be exception to that. But typically, you're going to want to look at getting long-term insurance and likely avoid the short-term. There's a question on the exam when I was going through, and I'm like, I don't know how well this got covered in the lecture videos or whatnot, so I just wanted to hit on it. So if the question asks if younger workers should get credit disability and credit life insurance, the answer is no. So what is credit disability and credit life insurance? Well, typically it's to protect a specific loan. Let's say you go to the bank and you get a car loan. They may ask you, do you want credit disability and credit life insurance? Basically, it's if you become disabled, it'll pay the loan while you're disabled. If you die, it'll pay off the loan. Typically, it's really expensive. The insurance companies make good money off of it, and it's better for you to just go elsewhere to get insurance through work, go get your own disability insurance. It will cover more than just the loan. Okay, so that one was one. You may get that one. Just be aware that that's what you want to answer for that one. All right. That's all I'm going to cover on disability. Let's talk about long-term care insurance. So the big thing here is when should you consider purchasing long-term care insurance? Okay, when you get a family. What else? Middle-aged. Okay, that's going to be the multiple choice answer you're going to look for is middle-aged. You don't want to do it when you're too young, because then you're going to pay premiums for a long time for something that has a very small chance of happening at least at that point in your life. You don't wait till you're too old, because you probably won't qualify for it because you're already too close to have the chance, or it's going to be really, really expensive to buy it. So middle age, which we're looking, what's middle age? Well, I'd say mid to late 40s into your 50s is when you want to think about purchasing long-term care insurance. Let's see, what else do we want to cover on that? I think that's really all I want to really focus on there. So let's move on to home insurance. Okay, so homeowners insurance is to protect one of your most valuable assets, right? The biggest asset that a lot of us will purchase is your home. A question that you may see come up is what is not covered that could impact your home? What is not covered in homeowners insurance? Okay, so something happens to your car when it's in the garage, and we'll actually bring that one up in just a minute. That would probably more likely be covered under your auto insurance. But what are some other potential things that could happen to your house that are likely not covered under a typical, okay, here comes somebody, Tori from online says flood damage. Exactly. Floods. Okay, flood, there's two specific ones. Because volcanoes are covered, actually. I was just thinking about that. The volcano in Hawaii, some of those people, as long as they have homeowners insurance, probably are covered by their insurance. So volcanoes covered, but which one is not covered? Jordan online tells us it's earthquake. So flood and earthquake. You usually have to get a separate policy for flood. You usually have to get a separate policy for earthquake. Because if that happens, it's going to be crazy and there's going to be a lot of damage. And the insurance companies are like, well, I can't really cover that unless I make you pay specifically for it. And earthquake insurance can be almost as expensive as your homeowner's policy in general will be, which covers everything else, including tornadoes and fire and volcanoes. But it's remember the flood and the earthquake are the two that don't get covered on a typical. So Teresa Online asked if the credit life that I talked about, the credit life insurance is the same as GAP. It is not. Okay, GAP insurance pays the difference between what you owe on the car and what what the car is worth. We're not going into that, so don't worry about that, but it's not the same as gap. Those are two separate insurance. So what does it cover, Tori asks. What are you talking about, Tori, as far as what is what covered? Homeowners insurance? For homeowners insurance, so Tori's asking what does it cover from what damage, and I'm assuming you're asking for homeowners insurance. And if you are, lecture video 7.3 has a list of coverages, and that's actually where I'm going to go next. How much coverage do you need? Okay, we're gonna jump to here because this is where you're more likely to be tested, are on the different policies. So there's 18 named perils. I don't have those listed. They are listed in your lecture video. I think it's 7.2 or 3. Can't remember. One of the two. There's 18 named. You don't honestly. You don't need to know all those 18 named perils, but those are the ones that would be covered under HO2. It will cover the 18 along with 3 liabilities, and those 3 liabilities are no-fault medical, no-fault property damage, and personal liability coverage. But really what you want to know is just the basics between these different ones. So HO3 is open perils. That means it'll cover everything unless there's something listed that it won't cover. And those usually will include flood and earthquake, and they may include a couple other things. HO2 is going to cover the 18 listed. HO1 is only going to cover the first 11 listed. So make sure you know that basic difference between those 3, HO1, HO2, HO3. And then after that, you just really need to remember that HO4 is for renters, HO6 is for condominiums, and HOA are for older homes that might be like special, historic, exactly. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Historic homes type of a deal, special insurance for them. Okay. Any questions on that? Hossein was suggesting to the online people that you want to have the coverage list ready for, so maybe have that in your notes, the 18 covered, in case they ask specifics about that. Okay. All right, let's talk a little bit about auto insurance. So auto insurance does a few things, protects you against legal liability. So if it's your fault, someone may come after you to pay for their damages. Covers medical expenses, can cover funeral expenses, and covers damage to the vehicle or to property. I've seen a couple of times lately where people have run into somebody else's fence or actually run into their house and broken down a wall of their house. So that's where the auto insurance is going to come in to cover the vehicle or property damage. So Part A, this is important because this is the one that's required by law. You have to you got to be able to protect people who might get injured. And so the minimum for Texas is 30, 60, 25. And does anybody remember what that means? What does the 30, 60, 25 mean? Okay, you're kind of heading the right direction. The 30,000 is individual bodily injury. The 60 is the most it will cover is number of persons. So if you had 3 people and they each needed 30,000, it'll only cover up to 60,000. And then the 25 is the property damage. So think about some of the more expensive cars out there on the road, and is that going to be enough if you get into a bad wreck and hurt like 2 or 3 people pretty badly and damage a really expensive car? No, that's why we're suggesting, and actually, I mean, here they're suggesting 100, 350. You could even think about 100, 300, 100, and it's not going to cost you a whole lot more, and it'll protect you for those $70,000 vehicles out there that are on the road. Okay, so that's what's required by state law. There's also Part B, which is the medical bills. And then there's Part C, which is the underinsured motorist, which there's also some requirements for that. And there's going to be a question that asks, well, what happens if I get in an accident with Fred, but it's Fred's fault, and my insurance company pays me? What's the term called that my insurance company is going to go after the insurance company of Fred? Subrogation. Make sure you know that term, subrogation. My insurance company is going to pay me right off the bat so I can get paid, but then they're going to go after the person who was actually at fault, and that's called subrogation. Okay, and then part D is comprehensive and collision. So this is where I think Andrew brought up, well, what if the car is in my garage and it ends up catching fire? Where is the coverage going to come? It's going to come from the comprehensive, right, which covers everything but the collision part. The collision covers if I'm running into somebody else or whatever. Comprehensive is going to do everything else, fire, theft, vandalism, hail, wind damage, whatnot. So let's say that I have an older vehicle. Should I consider, what part of this insurance, A, B, C, or D, should I consider dropping? Should it be the liability? No, that's required by law. Should it be the uninsured motorist? Should it be part D, comprehensive and collision? Probably, yeah, because that's not the part that's required by law. And at that point, if you have a really old vehicle, your insurance is not going to pay you out all that much on it. So it may make sense to drop that part if you're depending on what your premium is to cover it. All right, and then the last part I'm covering is umbrella insurance. So this is basically goes on top of existing insurance. You've got to have your homeowner's insurance, you've got to have your automobile insurance, and you've got to have it up to certain limits, and they'll tell you that when you go get it. But then on top of that, you can get umbrella insurance to cover for a huge situation that comes up. Maybe you get sued for $1 million. And so your homeowner's insurance will come in and pay, whatever because of this person that got hurt on your property. And then after that, the umbrella insurance is going to pay the rest. And the key here is you can get a fair amount for very inexpensive because you've already got the basic insurance that's going to take care of most situations. All right, let's do some questions real quick. Who sets the limits on minimums for liability on auto policy? Is it federal law, state law, insurance company's choice, or insured's choice? That is right. It is state law. Very good. Only people with lots of assets need personal umbrella policies. True or false? That's false. Okay. Which type of insurance is required by law? Liability. Good. We're on a roll here. Which homeowner's policy covers no fault medical payments, no fault property damage, and personal liability coverage? So the 3 liabilities. That is correct. It is D, all of the above. They all have those 3. It's just that what actual damages will they cover differ, but they'll do all 3 of the liability. All righty, I'm going to turn the time to Hussein.
All right, guys. So let's jump into the last learning goal for this review and for this class, and it's about estate planning. Who needs estate planning? Everybody. So it is not just for people who are about to kick the bucket, right? So let me give you some cases, and you tell me if they need estate planning or not. So let's say Rose is a young, healthy, unmarried, individual. Does she need estate planning? Yeah, but how she would use estate planning in her case? Because she would just prepare for she might have an accident, right? And then just a single healthy unmarried person, so because she doesn't have any. Exactly. So if she ends up, at the coma, maybe somebody needs to decide, whether they want to unplug her or not. So, or maybe just, it's not all about the dying, So let's say, you are selling your home and you need to travel overseas to Europe, So are you going to keep your customer waiting until you come back, or you gonna give your permission to somebody else? Exactly. So exactly, that's right. So basically with estate planning, you're gonna give your permission to somebody else to take care of the deal, and they can sign the contract instead of you. So here, estate planning is not all about going to die and, you know, so generally speaking, estate planning is about transferring effectively and efficiently your assets to your heirs. And avoiding estate taxes is just a part of it, not just about, avoiding estate taxes. Let me jump into the next slide. So you need to know these three important documents. We have healthcare proxy, durable power of attorney, and will. And so, for example, for healthcare proxy, it's about the healthcare issues that you need to make decisions. So in Texas, we have these two Texas Directive to physicians and family or segregants. And I think for different states, we have different names. So it depends which state you go. You may have different names, but basically, the documents are around the same idea. So, and also we have will, a living will. So make sure you know the difference between will and a living will. A living will basically is not a will, it is just a health directive. So it means that, if you need to, I don't know, go to an OR, have a surgery, somebody needs to, sign up the forms. So this is, this is the place that a living will, get kicks in. And the other one is durable power of attorney. So it means that, we have different levels of durable power of attorney. You can give a full permission or just for a specific event. So for example, if you want to let somebody to decide about your minor kids, about your business, about, if you are selling your home. So it depends what type of permission you want to give to your trustee. Okay, so let me jump into will. I think I already talked about this one. So it's really important document, especially if you have children, if you have minor children. So, and you wanna, decide who's gonna be guardian if you die, if you pass away, and also if who's gonna take care of your wealth, your home, once you are gone. Okay. And finally, it's really important to set executor because it's not really an easy job, and you want to set an executor of your will to somebody, for somebody that to actually needs a little bit about finances. Okay, so also again, it's better to discuss them from first place. So here's a tip here. Power of attorney is about before you die, and will it's after that. It's really important point, and I'm pretty sure you may get the question about this part. So after dying, it's will. Before that, power of attorney. So once you're dead, power of attorney is just basically invalid. Okay, let's have some questions here. Who needs estate planning? Husbands, parents with a lot of assets, single mom with minor children, wives, all of these. All of these, exactly. Next one. A living will goes into effect when you are able to make your own decisions. False. Why is that? Exactly. So basically, you just need to change. You are not able to make your own decisions. The power of attorney allows a named individual to be an executor of a will. That's right. So again, it's about, power of attorney before you die and will after you die. What is estate planning? A, the process of creating a will and the durable power of attorney. B, the process of allocating assets at debt to avoid estate taxes. The process of preparing financial and legal arrangements in anticipation of your death and incapacitation. C is right. So why A is wrong? Exactly. So A is just part of the answer, not the whole answer. And B, again, is not just about the taxes. So C is the complete answer. If you die without a will, you are considered to have died which of these? Indemnified, intestate, vested. Okay, so A, yeah, we have lots of A's online. So A basically is the insurance term. Who knows the definition of that? Can you, okay. So the right answer is C. Vested means that how much money you can take out and leave when you are leaving your job from your retirement account. And B, I think is type of like law document. I'm not sure if we have this in this course. And A means that basically you will receive money for the loss that you actually have. So you cannot make money, you just can cover your losses. So A is just an insurance term. But intestate means that you die without having a will. And if you have a will, just in case, it's gonna be, it is considered to have died testate. Okay. All right. So I think that would be the last question. Thank you guys for joining us. I think the review session is over. We're gonna stay here if you have any questions, and good luck with your exam and your final exams. Thank you for joining us today. Any other questions online?
Have a great summer, everybody.
Yeah, enjoy your summer.
Now, who on here was a question back there while ago on exposure to hazard peril?
Okay.
What about the driving on bad conditions?
Oh, me too. Why would it be exposure? Is that what you're